Welcome to We, the platform that seeks to educate through play. My name is Letabolaka Kumete and I will be your host for today's episode titled The Digital Presence of Cultural Institutions. My esteemed guests include Emily Kuhlman, curator and director of exhibitions at the Museum of Africa Diaspora, all the way from San Francisco in the United States. And alongside her, we have Giulia Coletti, who is in charge of public programs and digital sphere at Castello di Rivoli Museum of Contemporary Art, all the way from Turin in Italy. Ladies, thank you so much for dedicating your time to this episode. The episode is divided into 3 sections. Firstly, the collective experience, then branding as cultural work, and finally, popular culture. Each section will have 10 minutes for me to ask the question and for you to answer, with 2 questions per theme. At the end of the episode, you will reveal which cultural organization you will be donating to in exchange for your participation. So, an icebreaker question to start us off. You each have 30 seconds to answer. If you were not doing what you were doing right now, what career path would you have chosen? Giulia? Your time starts now.
I should admit that I consider a job position as a great opportunity for you to get in contact with different spheres and different attitudes and mindsets. So I consider a job position as a tool, as an instrumental tool to reach something, which namely is a communion with someone else. So I would do what I'm doing right now, basically. Keep on researching and reading and working collaboratively. It doesn't matter in which position. Of course, I am situated in Italy. This implies different mindsets, different social structures. Anyway, I'm part of this. But I would keep on researching and trying to stick to the plan of knowing more about communities, generally speaking.
Emily, your time starts now.
That's I feel like I've never known that this is what I wanted to do. It's a great position, and I'm so blessed to be able to love the job that I have and how I'm able to pay rent with something that I really love. But I would say it would definitely be, like as Julia said, working with artists, making sure that that there's a dialogue incorporated into all of that, and real collaboration, whatever that looks like, ideally in the art space. Oh, if I were to redo my life again, I would be a nurse.
All right. Now that we know what you would be doing, let us take a look at what you are currently doing. This will be the start of our first theme, titled The Collective Experience. The idea of the cultural worker has resonated with me for a long time, inside and outside of academic institutions. I'm always humbled by the ability to learn from others, thus teaching in the form of academic tutoring, facilitating short course workshops, and curriculum building independently with high schools in and around Cape Town has been one of my greatest opportunities of learning. Engaging with students of all ages, races, and religions really has nourished my ability to interact, listen, learn, and value working with people. In commemorating the title, Welcome to We, the we being cultural workers, we being museum staff, we being directors of the cultural institutions that we run, I would like you to share why you do what you do as cultural workers. Emily, would you like to go first?
I think if you look back at one's not only professional life and personal life, especially as a curator, you see all these different signs that this is what you were interested in and this is what you were really dedicated to, even if you didn't know that was the case in the time period. I was politicized in college through the Black Student Union, and that really informed my thoughts, specifically Black feminist theory, as I dove into contemporary art history and like really understanding the world through art practices and the works of artists and the ways that artists are able to engender both response and contemplation of kind of the ways that the world's work and our different communities work internationally. And I think that there was a way that particularly studying artists of African descent within the United States really was able to articulate the ways that the United States has been constructed and continues to have the systematic rules of, oppression and privilege embedded in all sections of the United States society, and how that's been extrapolated throughout the world. And so I think as a cultural worker, working with artists, working with collaborators and colleagues such as yourselves, it's been an ability to understand, think through, and as Julia said, like have a continued curiosity about not only how the world works, but why it works and who made those decisions. And I think through my specific, scholarship and research, thinking through Popel, Adrian Piper, Wu Sang, I think those are performance artists who are able to, for me at least, we're so important in our kind of articulating formally as well as cognitively those differences and the ways that we all experience the world differently. I think as cultural workers, at least what I'm trying to do is be able to shine a light to that and to show that the world can be constructed differently. And I think artists have a key component and have the expertise in showing us how to do that.
Julia, your time starts now.
No, I mean, the reason why I chose to study art is because it's art to me is the opposite of closure, you know what I mean? So being restricted within, a job, so-called job or a position, it's something that I always tried to escape in my life. That's the reason why I'm committed to working within contemporary art, because it keeps on having this multidisciplinary entry points that allows me to not focus on one thing per time, potentially, because I don't believe in a multitasking, but at least to sharing and having a tangential view and perspective on things which are in an organic way are very interconnected. You know what I mean? So even as a scientist, I would be a weird scientist, because curiosity is at stake here. That's the main point. I'm kind of aligned to what Emily's stated, but in order to answer to this question, which is quite difficult and broad, I have to say that first of all, I consider myself a privileged cultural worker in the sense that I had the chance over my life to choose a path and stay and stick to that path because someone was supporting me emotionally, economically, socially. So this is a privilege. So the point is, how can we give back or restitute it somehow, the privilege that you got without even asking for, you know what I mean? It's so how can you not make the difference, but changing your attitude, keep on studying, keep on deepening, keep being skeptic towards what is in front of you. It's a sort of duty that you have to give back the privilege that you got. So as a cultural worker, I do what I do because there are other persons that cannot do it. And in my attempt on working the way I do, I try to open up towards those that cannot do what I had the privilege to do so. I don't know whether I answered, but I think that, we are living we have always been lived in a sort of unbalanced and unstable globe, in the sense that you have more and you have less, materiality speaking. So the only thing that I can do is keep my mind open and bright and persevering, because I do believe that cultural worker means studying. And so I reckon that you have a duty.
So I'm sure you're wondering about the image of Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. I was drawn to this picture for two reasons. It is significant that Americans, as well as people outside of America, who feel a lot of the consequences that American leaders make, know that change is possible. Now, of course, there have been women presidents before, such as in Argentina, Central African Republic, and Margaret Thatcher in the UK. However, it's quite another phenomenon to see it happening, which personally brings me to my second point. Kamala Harris may have had the whole Democratic Party campaign behind her, but she has done a lot of work independently within her role as a politician and an attorney. So Kamala Harris being an example of hopefulness and diverse leadership within socio-political spheres. The question is, how can our digital presence as culture workers act as an innovative technological mediator into creating more inclusive exhibitions? Because this is such a saturated question, I will allow 5 minutes per person. Emily, you're up.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of this COVID period, I'm starting to refer to it as the before times, and these are the after times. In the after times, I think immediately there's just this reaction, right? That everyone was trying to produce and, as you said, Julia, translate or just to make exact mimics of what we do as cultural workers, as curators, onto to increase access for the buildings, the art spaces, the artworks that weren't able to be seen. I think quite quickly we realized that there needs to be considerable thoughtfulness that needs to be further attached to what we're creating in the digital space, and why. That there is so much more work that needs to be done into knowing what this digital space offers, and that it can't be a replacement for these institutions and spaces and artworks that we're unable to access at this moment. And even in presenting a digital exhibition, this idea of digital exhibition cannot be, in my mind, cannot be, images. Seeing an image of a painting on a screen is not seeing a work in space. I think there was an initial reaction to just do that, and now as it's playing out that this is longer and longer, we really need to invest in creating digital space works, right? And thinking through how to create work within the space on the screen, which artists have been doing forever, right? This is not something new for many artists. This is not something new for many curators. It's not new for many institutions. We just collectively have all been thrown into this situation now, where this is what we are working with, and I think we need to really account for our ability that we need time and thoughtfulness attached to it, that these projects can't just immediately go up. And if they do immediately go up, they're oftentimes inherently not as successful because of the ways I think that we were trying to collapse time and space into these digital spaces, which just doesn't work. And I think it's been great. Or as we, I think, collectively, globally turn to this second wave of shutdowns, that there will be possibility to think separately, right? Like of the reality or of what's possible in the physical space and what's possible in the digital space, and how they might overlap, but also how they might not. And that I think that there's also a grieving period with the physical space, right? I think in trying to replicate it digitally, we were trying to save something. And I think that we're now in a process of realizing that there are certain things that can't be saved at this moment. If we're relying on Zoom to stay connected and to see people's faces and to connect as humans, what we're not doing actually is like looking in each other's eyes, right? Like you're looking at yourself, you're looking, like there have to be psychological repercussions to this inability to actually see the person that you're speaking to and their eyes.
Julia, you're next.
Well, it's a little bit problematic as a question because in this question you are like given for granted that digitalization means democracy, which can also be true to some extent, and historically, like in the first years of the 2000, it was like this. And also if you think about Occupy Wall Street, Arabic Spring, it was some sort of attitude towards the digital that was like opening and giving the access to communicate to pieces of information that were censored, to like connecting and networking the globe, basically. So politically speaking, hacking some social media was an act of freedom. You think about WikiLeaks. So yeah, there is this side of the coin, but I don't want this to become a sort of narrative, only a positive narrative. You know what I mean? I work in the field of digital, and so I'm very like directly in touch with these feelings and this attitude of digitizing, especially because our museum is geographically located in a sort of marginal site of Italy and of course Europe. So through the digital, we are touching international stakeholders that we were not able to do. Still, I'm not that sure that the digital is just a sparkling light. There are a few things that I'm doubtful of, especially in terms of experience. It's a totally different experience. So if we conceive the digital as something alienated in the sense that it's something different from reality, and we don't transpose the reality that we cannot live right now into something else. So what is happening now is like just translating our lives, our real life into digital, and it's not working because we are keep on using the same codes that we are expecting to receive and perceive and experience in real contacts in life. So it's not working as a mere translation of words, basically. So if we start conceiving the digital as a totally different door for possibilities, well, then it's a kind of black hole in all senses, because a black hole is the brightest spot of the universe. But on the flip side, it's very scary. Digital and real doesn't work in a binary condition, in the sense that one strongly affects the other one. If you think about crypto value, if you think about financial, if you think about metadata, or like all the kind of algorithms that are basically linked to our reality. So to try to sum up, it's not one thing or another. There is a crossover, but just realizing that it's more complicated than that.
On to our next theme, branding as culture worker. You will have 30 seconds to answer this question. What you do as a labor of love in your culture work has the potential to shape you as an individual. As a culture worker, what lessons are you currently learning? Emily?
I would say what I'm learning is to take breaks, and what you're seeing in the digital space is a construction and isn't reality. And I think there's a way that Instagram can be very helpful for communicating news, artist work, self-promotion, but understanding what you see as self-promotion, or that there are the social networks that have always existed in the art world and the physical world are implicated and replicated in digital spaces if you see them or not.
Julia?
Saying that as a cultural worker, you are expected to shed a critical light onto the things that you have around you, which means that your critical perspective has a weight. So it's your value, basically. Your critical perspective is your value. What I'm learning and what I'm recently have been learning is like how to not let that value be instrumentalized by someone. And someone could be anyone, like people that you're working, so co-workers, or like for political reasons, or, we are working. Art is not like a mesosphere. Art is embedded, unfortunately or luckily, not yet, no, but we are embedded within systems. So we have to try to navigate those systems. How? Not being instrumentalized by someone. So not let the people misunderstand our attitude, our approaches.
The next question is, we are all affiliated to museums, or in my case, a gallery, in one way or another. How do you personally brand yourself outside of the institution that you work for? You will each have 3 minutes to answer this question. Julia?
So branding, it's quite incisive. It's quite an interesting word because we are working in the neoliberalism and capitalism is something that is always asking us to promote ourselves, to self-exploiting ourselves and promoting all over, even while we're sleeping. So the point is, how can I brand myself outside of what I'm doing? Well, I don't, because it's risky. This is true. It's risky when you're working for an institution or within an institution. The people are shaping their own idea of you according to your institution. And this can be problematic, again, if you let them instrumentalize in this. But if you know how to navigate this, it could be, as I was saying 3 minutes ago, or like in the previous question, it could be a tool. It could be extremely powerful because, again, it's a privilege, as I told you. So if you know how to use it, it could be very effective. In this age, you cannot detach private life from public life, or at least you are constantly performing, and so making value, basically. The point is can you realize this? Can you realize that you are self-promoting yourself and self-exploiting yourself, first of all? To what extent you are doing this, and for what reasons you are doing this? There is no justification in self-exploiting yourself now and never. But branding can be a two-sided tool. So just try to use it wisely.
Emily?
I think it's complicated. I think that how we present ourselves and what is personal and outward, in the ability for those two experiences to be in the same space or be on the same service or app, becomes necessary at times, and then also becomes really problematic. I mean, I think that's why there's so many Finstas or fake Instagrams. I mean, there are ways now that people are negotiating their presence and who can be seen and not seen on their Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, etc. And I think branding has a connotation that there's at least an expectation for an increase in capital, right? That branding becomes purposeful, and I hesitate towards thinking, and I think that's a great word that you're using, Julia, like how it's become instrumental and to how we are functioning within the museums that we work for and work in, and that the public sphere, and the work that we do our professional work doesn't always land within that museum space as well, and how we can really be just more, I think, cognizant of the way that we're placed in relation to each other. So, I mean, I think that I've noticed that even more within these after times, and have definitely made personal choices to step back from, I think, digital presentations of the self for my personal mental health, for, my relationship to my institution. There are real life implications to the way that one presents themselves on personal social media. We see that this all the time within the art world. It's on Art Forum News. We see that the museums and the worlds are watching, our personal accounts, and that's useful in certain ways and can also become complicated.
Finally, our last theme, popular culture. So, to provide some context, I stumbled upon this video while scrolling through Instagram in the thick of the COVID-19 pandemic here in South Africa, March 2020. There were two things that stood out to me about this video. One, the choreography, and two, the message. If someone wanted to truly understand what was happening in America within Black communities without feeling a sense of hopelessness, I would recommend this video. The artist, Toby Nwigwe, a Nigerian-American rapper whose mission is to make purpose popular. As his mission, he has decided to brand his life accordingly, which means that he has dedicated the next 10 years of his life to trying to make art a meaningful practice in his lived reality. So what sounds like rap music is a very similar lyrical intention, except there is no profanity, of course. Besides their visual representation being aesthetically pleasing with the cool mint uniform, they always include subtitles so that the message is carried across clearly and that it is able to get across to members who are also part of the visually impaired community. These kinds of social media strategies observed are inclusive strategies. They allow for the platform to be a safe space to talk about anything from politics to spirituality without compromising on the edutainment factor of the work. And I speak about Toby as a collective because he operates as such, including his wife, the Black Angels Collective, and the music producer Linnell. It is always about community. This video speaks about the realities of Black life in America at the height of a global pandemic where institutional racism finds people at their most vulnerable state, socially, economically, and politically. So it is very relevant that this video found its way into Contemporary Arts Museum in Houston, Texas. I'm also very impressed by the creative effort and intellectual thoughts that went into this project. And it is definitely a resource, as I said, that I would recommend in a teaching classroom, delving with issues as complex as intersectionality. So, our last theme for the night, which gets a whopping 3 minutes on the clock. What digital strategies can you recommend to ensure that the visitor experience is educational, entertaining, and dynamic? Which means that, it's not static. It is able to change and sit comfortably within new curator positions. Julia, do you want to give it a go?
Within my daily life at the museum, what we are realizing is that people are quite reactive towards the relationship with the artist in themselves. You know what I mean? So whenever there are moments, projects, happenings involving the direct artist's perspective, and this example seems like this attracts attracts in a different way the audience. You know what I mean? There are many institutions that are attempting to do so, but this condition, I think, that is strongest in small institutions that are working independently. Like there is a small institution near to in the south of Italy that is working in this moment with this idea of embedding the audience within digital artists' works and works in themselves. So in terms of strategy, because you were talking about strategies, I do believe that this could be a very kind of combo in terms of embedding the digital within the reality of a relationship, within the reality of a community. Yeah, but I mean, when I'm not that sure about the part where you are saying public versus private, independent versus institutional, because like the digital, what we are experiencing also is that we can establish a stronger relationship with small entities likewise. So I wouldn't use versus, I would use institutional with the independent, because the independent here has access to certain things that the institution cannot, and likewise. So when I say with instead of versus, it means that the digital could also support this kind of merging of realities. It can facilitate, it can properly channel this, and so break this binary condition of this or this. It could be this with this,
Emily?
And I think that there is a way that art is being produced right now in order to create beauty in safe spaces and to have outlets for expression, as it always has. And it's been great to see, especially with the work that you shared, Letabo, an ability, right, like the interest and importance of the visual, the audible, and the physical within kind of the creation and storytelling of that video piece, and to think through this political moment, and to really activate one's interest and political commitments through art pieces, I think has been very helpful for organizers as well, as artists and of themselves. And I think that there's, becoming, I think certain artists, especially in the United States, have made very strident efforts to maintain their political activism alongside their artistic practices as inherently intertwined. I think what we've seen is that on, smaller local levels as well as international levels, leaning into what the digital offers, right? It allows all of us in the United States, South Africa, and Italy to speak at a single time. And I think that, this digital space opens up the world in a lot of ways, especially, as the Museum of the African Diaspora, we're able to think further about the connections internationally that might not be logistically feasible due to a number of different realities, mostly, financial and logistical about traveling right now. And so and even before, so it's been really kind of incredible to see our education programs, public programs, really think through how to connect not only artists, but especially scholars, filmmakers, authors. We've had so many great conversations through these last couple of months. We've produced over 100 public programs digitally, and it's been, our reach has, previously we would be able to have, people living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and now, every week during our programs, we have people from all over the world, all over the United States, who continue to look at the work that we're doing. I think that that's been really great to think about our reach, but then also those partnerships and how the partnerships internationally, if it's, presenting new artwork such as this, is that new audiences are able to be introduced. And there seems to be a really interesting and invaluable way that the artists, collaborators, and institutions are being able to work together, even from our various households, and that institutional work can happen within this digital space. And that, the Museum of the African Diaspora definitely has a digital diaspora, and we found that I think initially it seemed daunting to staff that, there's only 9 people that work at the institution currently, and then have such an impactful relationship with our audiences who continue to come back weekly. It's been really incredible to to see how influential my colleagues are, and it's really a testament to their work. I think having public programs right on more accessible platforms such as YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, like Facebook Lives, become a very important way that we're presenting information and work. And so, I think that we're all just learning. I think, especially during these times, trying to be able to be, because we're a small institution, we're able to be nimble in a way that a lot of larger institutions find that they have more difficulty doing that. But it also has, it's a double-edged sword, because we're so nimble, we can kind of react and do, 100 programs short amount of time, or over. It's probably 130 now is a little. And thinking about the longevity of people, Zoom burnout is real, not only for the work that we're doing, but our audiences too. And as we started this conversation thinking about, what this digital world looks like right now, I think in March we thought it was going to be a much shorter time period than it actually is.
All right, thank you ladies for your answers. Here at Welcome to we like to explore alternative means of gratitude. To say thank you for your participation, Welcome to We, under Empowering the Arts, will donate 1,000 Rand to a cultural organization of your choice. It's not much, but in these trying times, a little goes a long way. So, Emily, Julia, have you made your decision? Please tell us about your organization.
I'm interested in donating the funds to BayCat, which is a non-profit social enterprise that really trains youth on media accessibility and storytelling to combat industry gaps in gender and gender gaps and racial gaps within the media industry. So it teaches youth and provides internships for learning further about filmmaking and the Media Center.
Thank you, ladies, for your participation. It means the most knowing that you are interested and invested in learning and growing with Empowering the Art.